We are running through postseason history here on Mark Rogers TV, taking every bowl team that we can possibly get to. And no, I was very ambitious in trying to get to all 41 bowl games, meaning 82 bowl teams and their postseason histories and the bowls that they're playing in. And no, I have not met the challenge. So I will get to as many as possible. Of course, we're making the priority of actually previewing the games, getting you set up with the matchups, and then also giving you our predictions and then delivering post-game instant analysis. So this is just kind of a side deal here, and really wanted to get this one because of the postseason tradition and history of these two programs is off the charts. Cotton Bowl. Ohio State, 11-2 Big Ten champions this year at 8-1. USC, the champions of the Pac-12 at 8-1 as well, 11-2. 8:30 Eastern Time, ESPN at Jerry's World in Dallas. All right, USC has defeated Ohio State 13 times to 9 in the season series, the all-time series between these two schools. Trojans have won 7 consecutive times. Okay, so you got to go back to the 1975 Rose Bowl, 74 season, 75 Rose Bowl. Buckeyes trounced USC in that game. The next year, they played for a third consecutive time. USC won on a 2-point conversion, 18-17. Since then, they played in the 85 Rose Bowl. Keith Byers had a big run early. Chris Carter was the game's MVP, but USC won the game 20-17. They played back-to-back in the late 80s, 1989 and 90. Actually, USC was a better program at that point. They throttled Ohio State at the Coliseum 42-3, came back, and in a lightning game where the game was shut down with 9 minutes left to play, Ohio State fell in that one 35-26. Similarly, about 20 years later, 2008, 2009, it was actually Todd Beckman's final game at quarterback at Ohio State as Terrell Pryor was ushered in as the heir apparent, and the Buckeyes were throttled by that tremendous USC team, 35-3, and Ohio State would still go on to a BCS bowl game and actually win the Rose Bowl the next year with Terrell Pryor at quarterback, having lost to USC at Ohio Stadium on a last-minute drive by Matt Barkley, 18-15. So the Buckeyes have been bludgeoned in this series in the last 40 years. 7 straight for USC over Ohio State. All right, all-time bowl records here. Ohio State 23-25. Their first 10 bowl games were in the Rose Bowl. I've explained this before, that the Big Ten would not allow its teams to play in any other bowl game than the Rose Bowl prior to 1975. And then you saw the likes of Ohio State and Michigan in particular for the ensuing years playing in major bowl games because the second-place team in the Big Ten would be one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the nation. And therefore, when the Big Ten finally allowed a team to play outside the Rose Bowl, you saw Ohio State going to the 76. Orange, Michigan made actually the first appearance of any Big Ten team outside of the Rose Bowl in the Orange Bowl the season before versus Oklahoma, Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl, etc., etc. Ohio State 7-7 in all-time in the Rose Bowl. It all started for the Buckeyes in postseason play in 1921. They lost to Cal at the Rose Bowl, 28-0. Ohio State, in their illustrious bowl history, 14 Rose Bowls, 5 Sugar Bowls, 8 Fiesta Bowls, an Orange Bowl, and this being their second Cotton Bowl. They won the first one in 1987 with Earl Bruce on the sideline and a young Urban Meyer as a graduate assistant in defeating Texas A&M. Chris Spielman had a big game in that one. Woody Hayes, of course, the great Ohio State head coach, 4-4 in the Rose Bowl. He won 5 national championships. Earl Bruce had a 5-4 record in bowl games at Ohio State. He actually, was 5-3 in bowl games, including the 1980 Rose Bowl in which Ohio State was playing as the #1 team, 11-0, but fell to Charles White and USC on a last-minute drive, 17-16. And the aforementioned 87 Cotton Bowl win, by Earl Bruce, Chris Spielman, Chris Carter, and company. Actually, that was the season in which Chris Carter was suspended for the season and went on to the NFL. John Cooper, 3-8 in bowl games, but he did win the 1997 Rose Bowl to finish an 11-1 campaign, number 2 ranking in the country, and number 2 was his finish in the Sugar Bowl in 1999 after defeating Texas A&M. Jim Tressel came in, had nearly unprecedented success in getting Ohio State to major bowl games. They played in 8 BCS bowl games. Tressel went 6-4 total in bowl games, having lost an Outback Bowl and winning the Alamo Bowl. He went 1-2 in national championship games, but he won a Rose Bowl, a Sugar Bowl, and 3 Fiesta Bowls. And now Urban Meyer, 3-2 as Buckeye head coach in postseason play. It all got started the 2012 season. Of course, they were ineligible because of probation. They lost the Orange Bowl to Clemson in 2013 and then won the national championship over Alabama and Oregon the next season. Beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta, then lost in the Fiesta to Clemson last year. All right. So since the year 2004, Ohio State has played in a major bowl game every year, excluding one, and that was the Luke Fickell year in which they went to the Gator Bowl at 6-6. All right, for as illustrious and impressive as that bowl showing is, USC is just ridiculous. Trojans are 35-18 all time in postseason play. They won their first 9 bowl games. They were all Rose Bowls. They are 25-9 all time in the Rose Bowl. They've played in the most Rose Bowls. They've won the most Rose Bowls. It's not even close. Excluding the 1924 Christmas Festival, whatever that was, against Missouri, their first 20 bowl games, USC, were in the Rose Bowl. John McKay, of course, is the legendary USC head coach who had all those tremendous players, all-time legends like O.J. Simpson, Sam Bam Cunningham, Lynn Swann, on down the line. All right, he took USC to 8 Rose Bowls between 1963 and 75, multiple national championships. I found this interesting in my research because I was unaware of this. In John McKay's last game, I did know that they defeated Texas A&M in the Liberty Bowl 20-0. So I just assumed, okay, it must have been a down year. McKay's last season, they went to the Liberty Bowl. They were playing the number 2 ranked team in the country, Texas A&M. Texas A&M was 10-1 playing in the Southwest Conference. They tied for the conference championship. They lost the tiebreaker, so that team went to the Cotton Bowl, the second place team, and it was just a free-for-all in terms of bowl invitations back in those days. The second place team in the Southwest Conference, which was also the number 2 team in the country, Texas A&M, goes to the Liberty Bowl. So USC's playing the number 2 team in the country in 30-degree weather in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl. That was John McKay's last game. He wins 20-0. John Robinson, you may know him from the Los Angeles Rams and taking that team to multiple playoffs and an NFC championship game against the Niners in 1989. He had a tremendous run of bowl play. 7-1 for USC was John Robinson in the late 70s. Then he went to the Rams. Then he came back to USC in the 90s. His last game was with Keyshawn Johnson and company in winning the Rose Bowl over Northwestern 41-32. John Robinson went 3-0 as Trojans head coach in Pasadena. Pete Carroll lost the Las Vegas Bowl, one of the more embarrassing losses for USC all-time in bowl play, but he corrected that issue very quickly. 7-1 in bowl games. The one loss was, of course, the Vince Young game at the Rose Bowl in 2006, losing the national championship to Texas. Other than that, Pete Carroll won 4 Rose Bowls. He won the Orange Bowl in winning the national championship over Adrian Peterson and Oklahoma 55-19 as well. Clay Helton won the Rose Bowl last year. A lot of Rose Bowls here for USC. 34 Rose Bowls. It's amazing. Clay Helton And, of course, Sam Darnold defeated Saquon Barkley and company last year, 52-49, a tremendous game that went down to the last-second field goal. The season before, Helton lost to Wisconsin in the Holiday Bowl. All right, the Cotton Bowl was first played in 1937 with Sammy Baugh and TCU defeating Marquette 16-6. During the time from the mid-1950s through the 1990s, the Southwest Conference champion always went to the Cotton Bowl. So think Texas, Houston, Texas A&M, Arkansas. That was the Southwest Conference. You had Baylor, you had TCU, you had SMU, Eric Dickerson, Craig James. They went to the Cotton Bowl in 1982 against Dan Marino. Okay, then the whole thing started to blow up in the mid-90s. That's when Penn State joined the Big Ten. That's when the Big 8 blew up and was added to becoming the Big 12. Actually, the Southwest Conference crumbled. Arkansas going to the SEC. Most of the other teams either going to lower divisions, i.e. TCU, or going to the Big 8 and becoming the Big 12. So the Cotton Bowl lost its stature from about 1995 until just a few years ago. Still a really entertaining, good bowl game, but it was a bowl game that for a long time during that 20-year time frame became an SEC versus Big 12 game, but down a few rungs after the BCS championship game took up a team or other BCS games. So the Cotton Bowl ousted out of the major bowl games. So at one point from the 40s and 50s up through into the 90s, your major bowl games, New Year's Day, Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl. Then the Fiesta snuck in there in the 80s and became a major player and eventually ousted the Cotton Bowl when the Southwest crumbled. The Cotton Bowl, again, a decent game for those 20 years, but now has been... It's reemerged. It's been brought back to the level of these other games and been brought into the New Year's Six and part of this major bowl configuration that surrounds the national playoffs. And that has gone on, of course, since 2014 with the first playoff. The Cotton Bowl, not just the game, the Cotton Bowl Classic, but the actual Cotton Bowl Stadium, once home of the Dallas Cowboys, and home of this game until 2009, until Jerry's World was built and the game was moved. And now you've got the Heart of Dallas Bowl played at the Cotton Bowl, but the actual Cotton Bowl is almost like a high school, an enormous high school football stadium compared to today's glamorous monstrosities. All right, Mark Rogers TV talking up college football history, and this was a fun one to look over with Ohio State and USC in the Cotton Bowl. Enjoy the game tonight, and we will see you next time.